Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. This is White Whale Comics. My name's Alec, here as always with John's Comics with Kids. What's up?
I mean, the odds are good that if you're doing something on this channel,
You're probably on it.
I'm convinced you to let me join.
Statistically. Um, yeah, no theme music, no countdown, just old school. We start talking, you better be ready.
Exactly.
I don't pay for StreamYard Premium.
Quack, quack.
Quack, quack. Got a couple people who were tailgating. I mean, obviously you were. Daymares,
Yes.
what's up, boys? Nice to see you. Entropy in Comics. And the boy who had 7 just jumped in. Blast from the
Maddie, what's
past.
up? Yeah.
Is he secretly coming back this year? Nobody knows. Well, he probably knows.
He just posted a video the other day. He got some books back, some Ghost Rider books. Recently CGC'd.
Very cool. So this is our annual look back at the year prior that we do and usually get crapped on for what we chose as our favorite stuff, but
because opinions should be judged.
This is my channel. I get to talk about what I like. You talk about what you like on your channel. How about that? Trailblazing, what's up? Nice for you to join us. Yeah, I mean, listen. What is it? 5 years later, I'm still talking about Little Bird. So,
Happy New Year, TJ.
Happy New Year, the year of Darkhawk. Every year is the year of Darkhawk, as far as I'm concerned. So, I mean, do you want to jump right into it? You want to talk about anything? Generally?
Yeah, I mean, he's setting the volleyball to me because he knows that I do want to rant a little bit. I'm sure we'll all get our turns, but in general, I want to talk a little bit about the challenge of end of the year 2023, whatever, every year lists, which is how do you judge judging one piece of art to another is already intrinsically ridiculous. But when you also compare, a book like Detective Comics, incredibly popular, 2 times a month, this book is coming out. And so they make 24 issues in a year. And then on the other side, Transformers drops 3 issues before the year ends, or Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees drops 2. How do you compare the 2 issues that just started this run that could completely devolve into garbage to 24 issues you're loving of another comic? Do you know what I mean? So I struggle with that in a big way. And I will admit that 2 of the books in my top 5 tonight, half of them came out in 2022, and then the other half came out in 2023. And I chose to ignore them last year, even though I was enjoying what I was reading, because I didn't know how it would wrap up, and I didn't know how to judge it compared to the other books from last year.
Yeah, so obviously we have talked about this on and off air a bit. And so I thought about it quite a bit, especially over the last week while I'm trying to compile my list.
Sure.
And I came to the conclusion that for myself, what I based my list on was what I read this year that I enjoyed the most. Regardless of if it started in 2022 and bled over, if it only had 2 issues this year and it could totally drop the ball. This is strictly the books I read in the calendar year 2023 that I
that at least had some issues that were published in that calendar year.
Right. So
because I mean, if I read something like I finished Deadly Class this year, but it finished in 2022.
Right.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yeah, no, it totally does.
And I don't know if that's the right, I don't know if there's a right or wrong way to go about it, but that's just to give you some transparency. That's what I based my list on.
So, and I kind of went the opposite direction in a sense, because for me, I felt like if I didn't get at least 5 issues from a book, I really struggled to include it. Now, I did include one. So I'm a hypocrite, as I often say, but it is, I just think it's really important to have these conversations, because I know the book that's going to be highest on my list, other people put it on last year's list and then completely ignored it this year, which I think is baloney, because half the issues came out this year.
Yeah.
So that is incredibly disingenuous to me. Like, if it was your best book of 2022 and half the issues came out in 2023 and you're not even going to mention it, that's baloney for me.
Maybe they, followed my philosophy, and the issues that came out in 2023 they did not enjoy. Now
that'd be a great point to make, and I would validate that completely. That if you felt like it tanked,
but I feel like that's worth mentioning in your year-end roundup. If you
absolutely
said, "Hey, this was a top pick for me last year, and it just dropped the ball this year."
Yeah,
but I mean, aggressively relaxing. Best book of 2024 is Marvel Meow. Have not read it. I'll take your word for it. Also, while I'm at it, hi, what's up, Old Wolf? Thanks for stopping by, buddy.
What's up, Tony?
Yeah, I mean, if it's the book I think you're talking about, that would be a wild take. And right before we went on air, I said I don't want to talk too much about books I didn't like this last year, because that's kind of not what the point is. So they could also be going by that philosophy of like, I want to keep this a positive list. But yes, I feel like people do tend to do that, where they just say, oh, well, I mentioned this last year, I don't need to mention it again.
And that for me is the disingenuous part. Now, if you mentioned it, like if I mention a book right now that I'm like, oh, this is great, but there's more issues coming next year, I may mention it twice if it continued to be that great into the next year.
And I think
I did an honorable mention last year of Human Target, right? Which was halfway done. It finished in 2023, and I finished reading it in 2023. So it is now making my list for 2023, but a lot of people felt like it was a 2022 book for them.
Yeah. And I feel like that is strictly something you see with miniseries or maxi series, like because people, if they continue to enjoy an ongoing, I'll see people put that on their list multiple years in a row. But something that had 6 issues come out and then 4 issues the next year, well, that doesn't count. I already mentioned that last year, and it's a mini series. So
I wanted to have that topic out there, because I was very no, I shouldn't say that. I was stunned that some people would pick something like Beneath the Trees, which dropped only 2 issues, over some books that dropped so many that they loved. It feels like a book that wait till next year. Let it actually tell a story.
Yeah.
For me, that 2 issues feels like not enough, but maybe that's,
well, I mean, again,
but it is incredibly subjective where you draw that line.
Right. And again, like I said, there are, I'm not going to spoil anything, but there are things that you might question on my list because of what you just said.
Let's get into it.
But I still, I'm going to stand by my philosophy that these are strictly the books that I've enjoyed reading the most this year, regardless of how many came out or when the series started.
You're full of baloney. Let's get into this.
Yeah. Oh, just you wait. You're going to never want to do a show with me again after you hear this book.
So the format for tonight, we're both going to count down our 5 faves, and then we're going to jump into, interior artists, covers, honorable mentions, other books, and we'll ramble through a lot of other things.
Yeah, as the guest, would you like to do your number 5 first?
Yeah, and I chose to mention it earlier because I knew that it would be number 5 on my list. Tom King, Greg Smallwood, Human Target. You can buy it in. I don't think there's a 1 hardcover version yet, but
there probably will be.
I love the 2 skinny edition hardcovers. Greg Smallwood.
So good.
Let's just honor the glory that is Greg Smallwood. And I think, he does so many great things with, like, he gives character in dialogue sequences. He'll even give let me
bigify you.
Subtle expressions to characters' faces. Subtle.
I really think he is someone that is not mentioned enough as like best artist working right now, because he just, every single time he just absolutely knocks it out of the park. That's
I-
it's just so good.
Yeah, and everybody wants to hit Guy Gardner at least some point in their life. So to have that moment so beautifully captured, it is glorious, and I really do think, we'll talk about interior artists later, and I'm sure I'll bring him up again. But it is a glowing love letter to him. This series,
Yeah.
and of course, on top of that, you get a Tom King written noir mystery, which is fantastic, and it's perfectly layered into the JSA kind of group from the 80s and 90s. You get a fabulous, it may be the best usage of Lex Luthor I've ever seen in a comic, because Luthor, he basically doubles for Luthor in issue 1, and then thinks they stopped an assassination attempt on Luthor, but then accidentally drinks poison and thinks that someone was trying to kill Luthor, but they've killed the human target. And so he's basically got, X number of months to live before he dies, and he's trying to solve his own murder. That's the premise of Human Target. And it's a beautiful use of Lex Luthor, because he's got millions of people that would want to kill him. So the suspect list is so dang long. It's just wonderfully utilized. So yeah, it's a great book. I highly recommend it if you haven't read it. Two trades, 12 issues, and I would be willing to bet you could probably get all 12 issues in a lot off of eBay for a really nominal price. And you get this amazing artwork. I'm seriously considering doing it at some point, because the artwork is that good.
Trailblazing. I was going to bring this up. He said recency bias as far as like books that came out towards the end of the year.
That's me. I'm gonna try to avoid that problem if I can. But I mentioned this last year, knowing that if it ended as good as I thought it would, I'd throw it on the list this year. So here it is.
TJ, as always, giving us some crap, saying this better pick up. I could be watching WandaVision for the first time. Got it on Blu-ray.
Pick up. You want speed? What do you want out of it?
I don't know. Better content. Other than
Stu is right. There's a Batman chasing me issue that's really funny, because ultimately Batman doesn't really appear in these books at all, but it's that like fear of like he's following me and he knows what I'm going to do next. It's really beautifully used.
I'm sure no one listed Saga.
I'm way behind on Saga.
I can probably guarantee that.
I have not read a trade for Saga in a long time, and that's how I read it. So
yeah, and to be fair to Saga, I gave up on it before the long break, and
sure,
I did not have any motivation to pick back up when it restarted. So,
and Gore is in the chat, so pump the brakes. Watch out.
Listen, I enjoyed the first 12 issues.
That's all you're giving it? It's 12?
Yeah.
I love it. All right, what's your number 5?
My number 5. So you mentioned Transformers, and I did not put Transformers on my list.
Okay.
I did, however, put the Energon universe on my list, which includes Transformers.
I see what you did there.
Yeah.
So Cobra Commander's coming out this week, right?
Cobra Commander's coming out this week, but that will be 2024 book. The first issue of Transformers we discussed on the show when it came out, and we were both like kind of a little meh on it. I think you much more so than I was.
Yeah.
I said, I liked it plenty to keep checking it out. I thought issue 2 was great. Issue 3 is just like action packed from beginning to end.
Yeah.
So I've been really pleased with what, as a whole, Daniel Warren Johnson is doing with the property.
Sure.
He's creating, what feels like a really awesome Saturday morning cartoon for me now as an adult. And then Duke number 1, while it had kind of the typical last page reveal,
it had to set up Cobra Commander, right?
Well, no, it's not a villain reveal, but it is like here's what's happening next.
Because Joshua Williamson's writing both of those books, right? The Cobra Commander and the Duke. I'm almost 100% certain.
The art was really solid in it. It was just like there were so many little, I don't want to say Easter eggs, just like little things added in for G.I. Joe fans.
Love notes, right?
Yeah, and just thoroughly entertaining. So I don't want to say they're at number 5 because like I enjoyed the heck out of both of them, and but they're more like light fluff than some of the other books I put on the
Gotcha.
list. If that makes sense, they're just
Yeah.
like they're popcorn movies,
Okay.
which is fine. Like I love popcorn movies, but
I mean, you're the biggest Fast and the Furious fan I know.
well, I do enjoy those films. But again, for what they are, like I'm not going to put it up against something that I think is like a wonderful piece of film artwork,
Right? Yeah. No, I get it.
So
It's all about family, David.
it is all about family. Truly what that series is about, not cars. So yeah, Energon Universe so far has not let me down.
I will say I have not read Duke. I was going to get a digital reading copy of it at some point just to catch it.
It's a mini series, so you could even wait for a trade if you really wanted to be behind.
Sure. I've been reading Transformers. I think I started issue 3 digitally. So that the first 2 I bought and read single issues.
Oh, so you are caught up on that.
I think so. Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, I mean, issue 3 was just like, it was just an action movie. It was great.
Yeah, yeah. It didn't slow down at all.
So yeah, I mean, you can give me a hard time for cheating that in like that, but you know what? It's my show, my channel.
No, ultimately, everyone arbitrarily draws that line wherever it is. There's no way to draw it any other way. All right, ready?
Number 4.
All right. Digitally, I read Sacrificers by Rick Remender. I even did a little video on this. If you haven't heard of this Image title, they've published 5 of their 6 issues in the first arc, and it's sort of an ongoing, kind of like he did Deadly Class, where it would publish in 6-issue kind of chunks. So Max Fuimara is the artist. This is great. This is fantastic. I don't know how I missed reading issue 1 when it dropped, whatever it was 6 months ago.
Especially because I'm pretty sure I even mentioned it when it came out.
Sunk right in. I will say maybe it's possible by the time I went back in, my shop didn't have any, and then I moved on. But this was a really interesting fantasy series. The universe is fascinating. The artwork is wonderful. The story and characters very powerful and deeply kind of meaningful. I think they really did a great job of crafting this sort of class warfare story, and the characters and the things they're dealing with feel so authentic. So I'm way in on this series. It feels like a universe that could have many stories and not just be 6 issues and done. So I'm very pumped on where this is going, the potential that it's got. And even though it's only had 5 issues of the first 6, and I'm sure that it's going to be an ongoing, and so there'll probably be another arc next year.
So I think that this really speaks to how much bullcorn my list is this year, mostly because of my reading habits or lack thereof. Because I bought the first issue when it came out, read it, liked it enough to put it on my sub list, and still have only read the first issue.
Nice work.
So it very well could have been on my list if I had just read the dang books I buy, especially considering Rick Remender had, I don't remember if it was my number 1 or number 2 book last year. So obviously, like, I like his stuff. So yeah, I need to figure out how to find time to read more books.
He's about as safe a bet in writing these days as I think you can find. Well, the only one of his I really didn't love was Scumbag, just because it got too gross for me. But
especially his like creator-owned stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I feel like a lot of these You don't
He didn't
remember?
remember.
I feel like a lot of writers nowadays are kind of just pumping out big two stuff to pay the bills and then taking the time to like put all their real effort into create their own stuff, which hell yeah, man. I'm into it. I'm
It
not
makes sense. I
criticizing.
mean, you got to make your money.
I think you shouldn't put as much effort into someone else's property as something that you're going to end up owning.
Sure. So, Stu, I have not read Void Rivals. I know that's part of that interconnected universe. Is that the one that's
Didn't we read the first issue for this program?
Yeah, but I didn't go beyond it.
Oh yeah.
But that's part of that Energon thing,
Yeah.
right? Too. Yeah.
It was kind of like the launching point before Transformers came out.
Gotcha. Ooh, Unruly. I've never read Fear Agent, and I haven't done the other one. I think Black Science, maybe, that you got recently. I haven't read that one. That just means I got something to look forward to.
He also did a book that I totally forgot he did. I never read it. Called Strange Girl.
Doesn't sound familiar.
I'm pretty sure it's like some of his earlier stuff. So I don't know if it's any good, but it's an old Image book. I just found a bunch of them at work the other day. And I was like, oh, look at that. I forgot that he wrote that. So
what's up, Carlito? Did we say hi to Carlito? I don't remember.
Not yet. What's up? How you doing, Carlito? Sorry.
So that was my number 4, I think, right? So
yes. So once again, you're going to be mad at me. But don't worry, you're only going to get madder as this list goes on.
Okay.
My number 4 is Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees.
I'm so hypercritical of this book right now. The funny thing is I've totally judged it without having even read it. Because I didn't want to read it. I was like, you know what? It's only going to drop 2 issues. I don't care how good they are. I'm going to read other stuff. Last time people tried to trick me on this, it was Stray Dogs, and I didn't enjoy it. So you're not going to trick me this time.
I mean, it is. The second issue wasn't as good as the first issue. That's kind of par for the course. But having said that, like that's within a vacuum, and it still was super entertaining. It is just like a cool murder mystery / psychological thriller / and it's just told obviously through this artwork of these funny little animal people,
right?
Which like on paper that shouldn't work at all. but the fact that it does work, I think gives it more. It deserves to be congratulated more because it makes it work rather than like the fact that they took on the challenge and did it that way.
Right.
It could just be people. Like so far, there's nothing about it that is like requiring it to be animals.
Sure.
Unless I'm missing something, which I could be because I'm pretty dense.
I mean, I know we've had Stray Dogs and even is it an Ablaze series, the Animal Farm series on Ablaze has been doing, which has been great. So I know that there's been some interest in anthropomorphic storylines right now. My favorite is still the Animal Farm one. I thought that was really well executed. I think they're on the second volume of that.
Animal Castle, right?
Animal Castle, yeah. But that's a good series too. If people are interested in more of that kind of thing, it's a really well drawn story based on, of course, Orwell's Animal Farm.
Right. So, I mean, once again, as Trailblazing pointed out before, it is a recency bias, possibly that is something I've read in the last couple months that stuck out. So maybe that kind of made me forget something earlier in the year that I read.
Right.
That may have been on the list, but it feels like such a higher tier than a lot of the other stuff I've been reading, especially lately.
Sure.
That even though it's only 2 issues and even though it could totally crap the bed next year, and under your rules, I would look like a fool, but
I'm glad I don't have to say it.
Under my guidelines,
But look, at least we're representing both extremes of the
Sure, yeah.
perspective.
We're like Siskel and Ebert.
We got way better beards. Yeah, Stu, I don't think enough people talk about Animal Castle. I'm in the midst of the second volume. I'm reading it digitally. I got a hardcover for the first volume and just really loved it. I think it's really, but then I like that story. I think there's a lot of deep meaning in that story that I find enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean, that might not have been a bad choice because you can just.
He got $70 for it, he said.
Yeah, it's up towards $100 now. Yeah,
Crazy.
Black Sod is incredible.
I don't know that one.
It's, I think, by a French artist. He was at Baltimore. He was next to Cully Hamner when we went.
Okay. How do you remember that? His booth was just directly opposite.
I don't know. Some things just stick with me.
Amazing.
But yeah, I mean that it is. It's on like a different level of comic. It is like a true like graphic novel comic.
Sure.
So I'm not like, I still put that in the same bucket, but it's from a much different point of view and much different kind of perspective of comic book making.
Cool. All right. Did you want to say more about Beneath the Trees? Anything else you want to?
Nope.
Okay. Because I'm going to do a book that only has dropped 3 issues, although the 4th one drops very soon and it's the final issue.
Well, too bad it's 2024. So
I loved this. If anybody hasn't read some of James Tynion IV's and Martin Simmons' Dracula, it's usually searchable under Universal Monsters Dracula.
Yeah.
And I guess Universal
series of those.
Yeah, Universal is partnering with Image to produce comics centered around some of their classic monster characters. Tynion went back to the original novel, Bram Stoker's Dracula, and crafted a really lean, clear-cut version of that story. And then Martin Simmons drew the freaking daylights out of this thing. We're going to talk again later, like I mentioned with Human Target, like interior artists of the year, but you just saw my top 2. Like there's just nobody besting Smallwood and Simmons. Like those guys absolutely slayed it. And I'm waiting for the hardcover of this because it's just I hope they give it a nice oversized format because I want to see that artwork as big as it possibly can be. It is stunning. And I think this week is the final issue of the series, issue 4. So knowing that they would end and knowing that the story is, they're not going to blow it on the 1 yard line.
Right. Because the story's already written.
Yeah. Yeah. They're not going to all of a sudden throw a spaceship in. It's not going to go cowboys and aliens at the last second. But it's superb. And again, I made a video on that one. You can find as well if you want to see different pieces of what the artwork looks like. I tried to zoom in and show some of the great spread and splash pages that Simmons has all through the first 3 issues. It's unbelievable. Painted, gorgeous pieces.
Yeah, I saw that post you made.
It's just, it's mind-blowingly good stuff. And
once again, I have the first 2 issues, haven't read them yet.
I legit went back to my shop and was like, no, I'm going to read it digitally. They're going to release it in some nice edition.
Right.
And that's the one.
4 issues. It's going to be a nice little collection.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's my number 3, I think. Yeah. 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Yep. My number 3. Gonna be real mad at this one. It's The Many Deaths of Layla Starr, the pen and ink version.
I'm leaving the show. I spent, you know how much time I spent culling this list and reading all kinds of crap. This guy. What do you do? What are you prepping a Dungeons and Dragons event? What are you doing?
Yeah, you'd think I was doing something like that. I mean, I kind of put this on for the memes, but it's still so good. And I mean,
are they going to? Is it the interior black and white as well?
Yeah.
Are they going to do the whole run that way?
I thought they were going to. I've only seen this issue come out though,
That's
which
kind of
seems
strange.
kind of weird. Um,
That's
but
disappointing.
yeah, I mean, I still think it looks better in color because the colors in this book were
So vibrant,
so,
right?
so pretty.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting to see the black and white art and all the line work and stuff on its own and let it
I would
shine.
love it if they did a hardcover that included both, but I know
Yeah.
that's a
Or-
BB Wilson omnibus.
Or just a second hardcover that's black and white. I'd buy it.
I haven't
Suck
bought
everything
the original one yet. I got to get around to that.
So yeah, I mean, like I said, I kind of put this in for the joke, but also I just love this book so much that
It's a great book, yeah.
because it also technically came out this year.
Yeah.
I had to give it props once again.
I mean, it's possible that when I get around to finishing Rare Flavors, that's a book that comes out for next year because it's still going. And I didn't love issue 1,
Yeah,
but I just knew that I would read the whole thing in 2024, and then it could be next year's book. Solid.
Yeah, I heard about this. Matt Wagner and Kelly Jones did a Kickstarter for Dracula, Vlad the Impaler Volume 1.
Well, good for them. Is that like a public domain, I guess, because it's not technically the Bram Stoker version, the Universal Pictures one?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like the Universal Pictures one should be almost public domain by now anyway, because
I mean, if Steamboat Willie is right,
which
you'll love it, Matt. If you like
a weird distinction,
yeah, definitely. If you liked the original Universal movies, because they definitely draw Dracula based on the original like Universal film. And if you like the story, Bram Stoker's story, it's incredibly true to that story while utilizing the visual aesthetic of that film. It's really well done.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Bram Stoker's book, has been public domain for quite some time, but Universal movies aren't yet. There you go. So yeah, I mean, you can tell the Bram Stoker story, you just can't have it look like Universal Monsters.
Unless you are Universal Monsters Dracula, presented to you by James Tynion IV and Push by Sapphire.
All right, so you're number 2?
Number 2, I'm going with a book that has just a couple issues left, but I read 10 or 9 of the 12 issues. I'm going with Traveling to Mars. This is by Mark.
About this book in the last month since you discovered it.
This is by Mark Russell, who some of you might know from the Second Coming series that he did, I think also for Ablaze or Aftershock. He's got a great wry sense of humor and tackles bold social topics and gives them a lot of weight and meaning. I've heard some people describe this book as depressing. I would say that it is darkly humorous, and it's an examination of some of the worst behaviors in corporate America, while also kind of looking at the lowest common denominator human beings in our country. So the concept is this: reasonably far into the future, looking at a United States that needs resources, a satellite on Mars or a rover on Mars discovers incredibly valuable mineral ores and reports it back to Earth. And a massive debate goes on the planet Earth as to who owns the rights to these minerals. And it is determined that whichever person or corporation or country plants their flag first wins the ores. So every corporation is now motivated incredibly fast to put together a launch to get to Mars and plant their flag. One corporation decides to cut corners by hiring a guy who, very Joe versus the volcano like, has just learned he's dying of cancer. And they're going to strap him to a rocket with the idea of, you're going to die soon anyways, spend your last few months enjoying relaxation on a trip to Mars, plant the flag for us, and when you die there, we will reimburse whatever living members of your family here on Earth to the tune of millions of dollars. So this guy, this sort of bumpkin guy, signs the check and gets on the rocket and flies his way to Mars. And the entire series, each issue is him kind of reflecting on his life because he's dying. He's not, there's no way for him to get out of this. There's no return trip. His only friends are a couple of droids on the ship with him. And he gets messages from the corporation that's sending him, the therapist that's meeting with him regularly, and occasionally from his family members. And there's a lot of intrigue going on, other corporations trying to stop him from being first, a lot of intercompetition stuff. But it's really a psychological look at this guy and kind of why he made this choice and what are the implications to his life at the end. So deep and meaningful, but also quirky and odd and kind of funny in other ways, much like his Second Coming books, which I really enjoyed. And again, it's 9 of the 12 issues that I've read, but I've just found it incredibly interesting and well put together.
Nice. I'll definitely have to check it out once it's finished.
Yeah, I think there's. I mean, I'm trying to understand. I think there's 2 dropping in January, like one towards the beginning of the month and one at the very end. But it's hard sometimes with those indie publishers. It's tricky to understand what the publication schedules. This is by Ablaze, by the way, Unruly. But I think you'd really enjoy it. I think it's got a great perspective on humanity, both the individual and then the corporation version. Thank you.
Yeah, and
when I finish reading it, I'm sure I'll make a video on it.
Clearly has read it, so he can stand by your.
Very well read. He is an absolutely well read member of our community.
I just want to point out that Daymare said, "I don't like dark humor or sarcasm."
It's true. I've known that about him.
If you saw the stuff he sends me on Instagram, I call bullcorn.
Or Unruly says the guy whose favorite book is Murder Hobo. But I love Mark Russell's stuff. I know Second Coming was not everybody's cup of tea because it definitely was looking at religion through an incredibly harsh microscope. But I also think he was not hateful. It was very much look at what was good about it and what we're kind of ruining, what we've damaged, right? And I think he had a great sense of humor about it. And I really I thought there were issues of that had me in tears, and then issues in that had me laughing. And I think he really was able to thread that complicated needle.
Nice. Yeah, I'll definitely. Lonely space stories are right on my alley. So,
and quirky, awkward droids.
Yeah,
you would absolutely love it.
So I'll definitely have to check it out at some point.
Sure. And I know it's on a lot of people's top 2 or 3 issues or books. For this year.
The year, yeah. My number 2 is going to continue the anger train from John. And if more issues of this had come out this year, it probably would have been my number 1 because I enjoyed it.
So you're saying I guilted you into making this a number 2?
No. I just I stand by my number 1 pick, but
okay.
It's the Deviant.
This is Lemire?
Tynan.
Okay.
It is the first 2 issues are so damn good. Maybe my favorite thing I've read by him. And the artwork is also very impressive. It touches on so many interesting things. Mostly, it's a story about a serial killer who this guy is writing a comic book about, or is trying to write a comic book about.
Okay.
And both the person who committed or was found guilty of the crimes but claims to be innocent and the comic book writer are both gay men. And so it's a lot about, the deviancy of that and how it's perceived. and kind of how this main character sees a lot of his struggles in this killer, even though, and he's kind of like, struggles with that in a lot of ways.
And
But
we discussed issue 1 at some point, like a couple
yeah,
months back, right?
yeah,
Because I read issue 1. This is sounding
because
very
I told
familiar,
you to.
but I didn't go beyond issue 1 because I was like, oh, I'll just get the trade. Okay.
Issue 2 did not lose a beat for me. It continued to be just as powerful, and like I said, if more issues of this come out, it would have probably, if it kept up this pace, without question, it would have been number one.
Nice.
It's just it's beautiful in such a sad way, which again, that's like, my cup of tea. Lonely space stories and beautifully sad.
Which shocks me that you haven't read Traveling to Mars, because it kind of ticks all those boxes.
Both of those, yeah. So I can't wait to read more of that for sure, and it will likely be on my list next year. So spoiler alert.
And I thank you, Stu and Lane, for the conversations you're having, because the truth is, you hear so many people complain about how they hate comics nowadays. Modern comics are the worst. I don't like modern comics, and I just think there's oftentimes so many books to look through that you miss stuff, and we all do, as is evident by this conversation here. So it's great to remind people that there's a ton of really quality stuff, and what you have are these great YouTube channels, like Alec mentioned one that he was watching beforehand, but like YouTube channels we watch that we respect, where we hear perspectives on books, and then you get a chance to go and then read them.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, there's more books coming out now than ever, but also, like, Unruly says we're living in a true golden age of the medium. Like, I don't disagree with that, but at the same time, like, most of what the big two are doing are big twos. So, like, people are doing stuff that is, treating.
I'm gonna keep that.
Daymare said the same thing. How many people are saying that about the only the big two, and ridiculous amount of indie bangers? I think
ultimately, I only have one of the big two in my list, and I don't think you're going to have any. So that's not where the great stuff is usually happening.
Right. And not to say that it can't, but especially this last year, Marvel especially has just been letting me down. And we've talked about this before on the show. And
truly,
DC has been doing some interesting stuff. And like, I almost put, there's a couple of honorable mentions I have of DC books.
Yeah.
But editorial is just failing on every end there. And while there is the problem that we've discussed quite a bit of, like, a lot of indie books feeling like movie pitches rather than stories that stand on their own,
right?
That is an unfortunate situation with the industry at the moment. But I think that the stuff that is good that is coming out is as good as anything in the last 10 years.
For sure. And Unruly's point towards the top there, 95% of the people complaining about modern comics are people who only read Cape comics. And that's a great point, is people that don't want to branch into indies and read these other stories are, of course, going to be more frustrated. And I get that. I totally, and to Matt's point at the bottom too, as well. I get that. Because you love those characters, you love those universes, and you want them to thrive. And the best talented people are veering towards independent books, and that's the problem.
And I always make the joke that Silver Age sucks, and this might be a bold statement, but as far as Cape books go, there are obviously some great stories that have been told over the last 60, 70 years, however long
right,
you want to include in those categories. But the majority of Cape books are garbage. Like, they are what they are. if you're looking like all of the greatest books ever written in the comic medium, you know, maybe a couple of them, like, you know, people might put something like Year One or Dark Knight Returns up
Right,
there, or
right.
you know, a couple other things. But if you look at like the truly great works, none of them are cape books.
Right. It's a great point. I mean, you look at the years we've done this show, and I would say, on average, it's of the 10 books that we mentioned at the end of the show, 1, 2 from the
Yeah.
big two. I
Like,
mean, we
I have
had Catwoman, Lonely City last
but
year.
I almost like don't even count that as a cape book.
I mean, she doesn't wear a cape.
Yeah, true.
But
Yeah.
Catwoman, Lonely City, for the boy who had 7, if you're looking for a great cape book from the last couple of years, that Catwoman, Lonely City is phenomenal, and the hardcover for that's worth it.
Yeah.
But we don't worry, we still got more indies for you to finish out the night.
Yeah, Geiger Universe, people are, and that Ghost Machine is coming out, that whole line of books. Junkyard Joe is under that, and
I would
Red
consider
Code.
Junkyard Joe an honorable mention. It was really close. It was probably my number 6 book. Junkyard Joe is my favorite. I did not care for Geiger. I read the entire Geiger book. I was kind of bored by it, but Junkyard Joe is phenomenal. That's a great, great book.
Yeah. All right. Ready for your number 1?
Yeah, and it's your thumbnail. It was pretty obvious for me, at least, that I was going to pick 8 Billion Genies. Is it your number 1 too?
Yeah.
Yes, look at that. Hey, we agreed again. 4 of these issues were published last year. 4 of them were published this year. I know a lot of people are ignoring 8 Billion Genies this year. I got the Calvin and Hobbes
so good.
cover. I love. There's even a little Calvin genie right here in the corner.
Yeah.
It's a really phenomenal book. Charles Soule, Ryan Brown, Image Comics. 8 Billion Genies is the concept that one day, in an instant, every single human being on planet Earth gets a genie, and they're allowed one wish. And the genies are very mischievous, and the little rules they have about how wishes can cancel one another out, and all the little things that could possibly entertain the genies come into play as people grant their wishes. And issue 1 is the first 8 minutes, I think, and then it continues on sequentially. I think the first 8 hours is issue 2, 8 days, 8 months, 8 years, and then it's like 8 centuries or something.
Something crazy.
It goes way out. Each part of the story expands on what are the consequences. By Matt, what are the consequences of these wishes, the repercussions of each person's wish, those who hold on to their wishes, all those kind of things. It's just a really good story, really unique, unlike anything you'll see.
Imaginative.
Yeah, creative to the extreme. And I just really loved it. I really thought it was great. And I didn't mention it last year because I didn't know where it was going to go. I think at that point I'd only read like 3 of the 4 issues they had published. And then you were the one that was like, dude, it got so good. And I went out and kind of like snagged the remaining issues and caught up and read them all. And I'm very pleased that I did.
Yeah. I mean, it more than stuck the landing for me. It just, the last issue especially is very, it feels very large in a good way. Like it feels, but it also like has a very tidy ending.
Mm-hmm.
An emotional ending. It's just, yeah. I mean, there's a reason it's been on my list 2 years in a row because it's worthy. It's so good.
Yeah. Lane, I can totally understand how someone might like Geiger more than Junkyard Joe, but Junkyard Joe just really hit me hard. And Dr. Venkman, the Geeky Puppet Show at the bottom, Murder Falcon is a masterpiece. It's hard to see, but I got a poster right there for Murder Falcon, thanks to my buddy Daymares, who, if you befriend Daymares, he may still have some cool swag. I got my Murder Falcon coaster sitting right here. I use that every night, so it's just waiting right here. He's got some cool gear. He may be able to hook you up for a good price.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously we've already done multiple shows on this book. I don't think we need to talk about it too much longer.
No.
If you want to know more about it, go back and watch. Because we did issue 1 on the show. We did a wrap up when issue 8 came out, and obviously we talked about it at the year end last year.
You got it.
So
yeah, when issue 8 came out and the series wrapped, we did, I thought, a good real discussion of the whole picture for this, because it was really well handled. Charles, it's the best thing I think Charles Soule's ever done.
Yeah, I agree. Well, certainly that I've read of his. So surprisingly, like, that almost took an hour. So
yeah.
Did you have some covers you wanted to show off?
Oh, I got a ton of stuff I got out. I want to honorable mention a couple other books.
Yeah,
sure. I know Seeley, Felicis, everybody. I did not like issue 1 of Local Man, or at least I felt it was kind of middling.
Yeah.
This got a ton better. I've now caught up completely, and I think Local Man is a great ongoing series that's got a lot of potential. It's a funnier version of The Boys without having to be just as graphic and intense. More in love with 90s comics, which I think is kind of fun and funny. So yeah, I did not love, like I mentioned, Stray Dogs. I think this is far superior and gotten way better.
Yeah,
and then of course
another book that we talked about on the show that we both kind of agreed the first issue didn't really grab us.
Yeah,
but I've been hearing also a lot of good stuff about it, so I will definitely have to go back and check it out.
And then every year, Brubaker and Phillips drop a couple of bangers. This year was Night Fever, which is a kind of trippy look at writers and getting in their own heads and then needing to escape. And it's a fun, trippy book. But I preferred, more recently, he did Where the Body Was, which is a quirky kind of small town murder mystery that has a Coen Brothers kind of feel to it. Has a little bit of comedy mixed in for sure, some oddball characters, but I get everything that Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips do. Yeah. I finally caught up on Reckless, which would have made my list last year had I been caught up, because they were dropping 2 a year at that point. And has those, I think, 6 volumes or 5 volumes of Reckless are my personal favorite Brubaker stuff, although I love his Daredevil work and obviously his Captain America stuff. But definitely I recommend Where the Body Was from this year or Reckless from previous years. Must read for horror fans. 4th issue dropped this week, The Midnight Show. I don't know that one.
Yeah.
Those are my indie books, but I can do a Marvel and a DC stack if you want.
Sure. I mean, I can quickly mention my I'm not going to go too deep into them, but The Sickness, which one of the reasons why I didn't put that on my actual list is I missed issue 2, so I need to go back and get that. But I liked issue 1. I found it interesting enough that I figured it's worth honorable mentioning. Wonder Woman and Green Lantern War Journal are the 2 DC books that I've actually been enjoying month to month. So I got to give credit where credit's due there. So I'm not a big 2 hater. And this is going to be a weird one because I haven't read it, but
what?
the new Daniel Clowes book called Monica.
You're just like, it's going to be good.
It's going to be good. Like, I've heard glowing things about it. People said it's the best thing he's ever done. I love his work, so I don't doubt that I will love it. I just haven't gotten around to picking it up yet. But I just wanted to shout it out because I'm a fan of his, and I didn't want it to go unmentioned.
Sure. No, for my DC list, obviously, yeah, that Wonder Woman's on that list. I have not loved where Green Lantern War Journal has gone since issue 1. And the most recent issue is a real disappointment for me. So I don't know where it'll finish in the end for me, but that did not actually make my list. I'm gonna say my favorite other DC book though is Birds of Prey.
That's what I keep hearing. I gotta read it.
It's superb. It's you mentioned popcorn reading, and it is perfectly that. And if you want to see Big Barda and Wonder Woman throw down with really great artwork thrown in, like it's just super. It's just really quality stuff. And I just got issue 5 today. Really just an entertaining book. And we mentioned Junkyard Joe, and I'll mention it again. Of course, that would have made my number 6 spot. I did not love Enfield Gang Massacre. I was forcing myself to read it.
Yeah, I missed the first issue when it came out. I missed the first issue when it came out, and I do like that creative team, so I've kind of been trade waiting on it. But a guy I work with says like it's his favorite book month to month right now. So
I just thought it was an average Western. Like it didn't really have anything bigger for me, so it didn't even top my indies list. But I was also somebody frustrated with Texas Blood. Like I got super frustrated with that. And then the rest of my DC stack is just great Poison Ivy covers.
Yeah,
like it's just amazing. Like every week they've got something. They got some cover that just really does something different, or really blows my mind. And I just love the artwork going on these covers. So when you mention, I mean, I still am reading Poison Ivy and still very much enjoying it. In fact, the last issue I thought was great, but the covers are just cover art wise.
Yeah,
that book is nailing it.
I just grabbed 2 random ones, and I was going to say that basically I could have grabbed any of the covers more or less. Like 90% of them are just absolute 10s.
Yes.
So, yes, I totally agree there.
Yes, totally agree. And then lastly, I've got Marvel. If you want me to do Marvel,
yeah, I got a couple other covers to show off, but those will go.
Oh no, go ahead. You want to do yours?
No, I mean, we're still on the.
Okay, so Marvel obviously was probably lowest on my list, but there were still some gems out there like Rainbow Rowell's She-Hulk, which wrapped in July. And then relaunched as the Sensational She-Hulk, still very entertaining, and I think a very solid comic if you like She-Hulk at all and entertained by the comedy of that character, worth the time. Jason Aaron's Punisher ended, and I've really enjoyed that, and I thought that was a really great, I guess you could call it a maxi series, 12-issue run. Very good. X-Men Red, I thought was fantastic. I'm a Storm fanboy, so that's all I really needed. But Al Ewing doing a great job there. I thought Uncanny Spider-Man finished perfectly. The sort of hopscotching of series by Simon Spurrier concerning Nightcrawler. Sorry, he did Way of X, Legion of X, and then Uncanny Spider-Man, accounting for almost 25 I think issues of story built around Kurt. And I think he really did a great job educating us on a modern look at this great character who never really gets a ton of focus. And so I thought those were beautifully handled. I gotta mention his X-Men Blue, obviously, with this phenomenal cover. Also a great Cy Spurrier book and tied into that storyline. The best book I think I read from Marvel this year was Immortal X-Men, which I've just loved Kieran Gillen's take on these characters. I think he's second only to Hickman as far as what I wanted out of this era. And it was the most closely related to the launch title, to House and Powers. Like it felt worthy of that. And as far as covers, there was just some really great. I got the Sensational She-Hulk variant where she's duct taping floaties together. So good. I mentioned Immortal X-Men. I think it continued to have just great variant covers. I don't know why they almost always had Storm, because she's not really in this book.
They did it for you, John.
I mean, to keep me going, right? To keep me going. But like, here's another great one. Just stunning. And then here's one from Storm of the Brotherhood. That was really great. But the best 2 covers, and as much as I loved this one, just recent bias probably on this one, but I think the cover of maybe the year for me is this great.
It's real good
final issue to Daredevil cover. And thank you to Old Wolf, who got my LCS, did not know that this was going to be a Zdarsky variant, and so they didn't order any.
Yeah.
and Tony got me one, but it's the perfect end to a series that does need a little love this year. I know it didn't finish maybe as strong as it started, but it was still a really great run.
Yeah, and
And
minimalist covers are always right up my alley.
It's just a masterpiece.
Yeah,
so
really
this is probably my cover of the year.
I can't fault you on that.
There you go. So there's my Marvel. I know it's not as good as DC this year, and certainly not as good as the Indies, but that's where it came out.
A couple of covers that I just pulled out. I don't necessarily know that they're all of my favorites of the year, but certainly up there. This variant for Batman the Joker Deadly Duo #5.
That's a great cover. Who's the artist on that? You know? Sorry, I'm gonna make you
I forget. I can see the autograph, but I can't read it.
Yeah, I think Stu. I think it's a great book. You could read independently of the X-Men stuff. And Immortal X-Men, I think, is just independently a very interesting book.
So hopefully someone.
He says
Warren Johnson.
DWJ.
Oh yeah, DWJ. That would make sense. That's why awesome. I like it so much.
Yeah, it's a great cover.
This was, I think, a 1 in 100. So I've spent stupid money on it, but don't regret it. This Usagi Yojimbo Paulo Rivera variant.
Ooh, never seen that one.
Yeah. This David Aja.
Yeah.
Spider-Boy.
His stuff is so great. I don't know why he's not doing a book right now with interior art. Maybe he just prefers the covers,
or maybe he's just doing non-comic stuff. I'm not sure, but
maybe.
I'm always happy to see his artwork. So damn good. And also another Spider-Man book that just came out, the David Baldeon cover from Miles Morales.
Yeah.
Similar kind of vibe, but
for sure.
Like I said, those minimalist covers.
Hard to go wrong.
Love them. And very quickly before we depart, unless there's something else you want to talk about, just want to show off my pickup of the year. We got back at MegaCon earlier this year.
Oh, that's a great pickup.
Yeah, just so crispy, near mint. Really happy to own this finally. One of those books that, like, as a kid, I was like, well, I'll never get that book. It's so expensive.
And then you cruising around MegaCon and boom.
And then I spend adult money that I shouldn't spend.
The newest book I got, I haven't shared. I got this one.
Ooh.
Which I was like, it looks more purple on my screen. I guess the color is off a little bit on my camera.
Newsstand. It
is a newsie, yeah. But yeah, I've always wanted one of these. It's like, come on, you got everybody on this cover. So it's the Marvel Team Up version, yeah.
Yeah, it's a Mignola cover.
It is. So there you go.
Love that guy. Cool. Anything else you want to touch on before we bounce?
No, I was impressed how effectively we got through all this stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's other books I'm not caught up on. World's Finest, Dan Mora and Mark Waid, but I've been reading the hardcovers of that and loving that series. I've read the 2 that they've dropped, but I know that they're probably into issue 20 or something by now, so I'm well behind where they are currently. But that's a good ongoing too. But that's the only one I could think of that I'm intentionally behind because I just read the hardcovers.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we will be back next month, back on John's channel to talk about books that came out in January.
Yep.
And hopefully on the 14th, I think we decided.
Is that what it was? Double check.
I mean, it's still up in the air, but at the moment, tentatively the 14th, we're going to be back here on my channel Sunday nights for D&D. I'm going to be DMing again after JP's epic Salt March. So I'm excited for that. So stop by if you want to hear us make some dick jokes about D&D characters. Anything else you want to plug before we go?
Tomorrow night, JP and I are on Mr. Comics 89's channel for the finale of his Villains Brawl. Dr. Doom versus Poison Ivy. You pick who's the champ. And we've changed the voting a little bit. So there's the pre-voting, which is happening now, but it's pretty neck and neck. And then the night of the show, we'll have a separate voting group, and that'll get counted for double, I think. So it should be fun. So show up in the chat and listen to JP and I talk about Doom versus boobs.
I mean, boobs got to win every time there, right?
I'll put up the best argument I can.
Yeah. Or the best two arguments that you can.
Well, I'm representing Doom, so. No, I'm Doom, Puppet Show. Don't worry, I'm Doom. I subbed in for one episode of to help JP get to the finals because I wanted boobs versus Doom. But I'm Doom now, so I'm all in on Doom.
All right. Well, good luck.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you everyone for joining us and hanging out in the chat and adding your insight and your encouragement. We really do appreciate you guys being here with us. I know I'm not very prolific anymore, but it's cool to see you guys still tuning in when I do show up. So thank you very much. Hope everyone had a great, safe New Year and a good holiday season and a great 2024 so far. Crazy that it's 2024. It's going to be 2030 before we know it. And we'll still be here probably doing this.
Yes, I like that mentality.
If I have anything to say about it. So have a great night and talk to you guys soon, and never turn your back on the ocean. Okay, bye.